Welcome back, everyone, to this
Welcome back.
week's episode of Enough. Enough.
It's
All
good
right.
to have you all here.
Yeah, good to have you back and with us for another episode. This week, we're going to continue our Saint Story series, which happens once a month. And this week, we will be talking about St.John Maximovitch, who we have a little icon of him right over here somewhere, if you can see. But he is a really cool saint, and I think the coolest thing about him is that he's an American saint. So it's
Yeah.
St. John Maximovitch of Shanghai and San Francisco.
Yep.
And we don't really, I guess we haven't seen that many American saints at this point in time, but hopefully, God willing, we'll have some more. But I think it's just a really cool thing because his relics are in San Francisco. You can go venerate him at the church there, and it gives us like a tie to the rest of the Orthodox world.
Yeah.
Because in Greece and Russia and all of the
There's
other
relics
Orthodox,
everywhere.
And we don't really have that, here as much. So sometimes it feels like we're kind of disconnected from the rest of the Orthodox world.
Yeah.
But
So I actually had the blessing to go and actually visit St. John Chrysostom's relics.
Maximovitch.
Maximovitch. Sorry. But St. John Maximovitch's relics and the church he served in and everything in San Fran. And it was an absolutely amazing experience. We got to see his vestments, and I think the most touching moment for me was when the priest monk that kind of guided us through this experience, I guess. We got to see his study where he'd write letters to people, his sermons and things, and pray. And there was this huge green chair in the corner of the room, and the room was like tiny. And the priest monk was like, you can sit in it and just pray to St. John, ask him what you need or anything. And so the whole family got to do it, and that chair was uncomfortable. It was like a wooden board, and he would sit in that thing for hours praying for all of his spiritual children, everything, the world. And it just went to show that he wasn't like in some posh living area or anything. And so he really lived an ascetic life in the world, which a lot of people don't know can happen. Since we are in the world, like, we can't do what the monks and nuns do.
Well, it's easier not to.
Exactly.
It's a little more comfortable not to do so.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, St. John started off as an ascetic. He was tonsured a monk, and then shortly after became a deacon, higher deacon, priest, and then later on bishop.
Yeah.
But those ascetic practices carried with him his whole life. The chair you were talking about. During the nights, he would only sleep like 1 to 2 hours a night at the most, and the rest of the time he would spend praying in the chair or in front of the icons, kneeling on the ground. And many times people would come to get him to go to the services, and they would knock on his door and find him just kneeling in prayer, but he'd just fallen asleep, and that's how he would fall asleep. He wouldn't say, okay, like, I'm going to bed now. He would be in prayer, and sleep would overcome him because of how tired he was, because he never slept. And just like that, he rarely ate. He ate very little, maybe normally just one meal a day. And then during the fast, he would only eat the bread from the altar. And that would be during the service and all of that. So he truly was an ascetic throughout his life. It didn't stop when he was ordained and then enthroned to the episcopacy, but he was an ascetic all his life.
Yeah.
And I think there is many miracles that people saw during his life. So you want to kind of tell us about that?
Yeah, well, there was this, like, I don't know how we would say it, but like a prayer room, like off to the corner or like off to the side of the altar. And there's like a little window on it. And, that's where he'd do like his prayers and everything before serving. And people would notice that he would like grow a little taller in the window whenever he was praying. So people were like, what's up with that? So they go and see. And he was like hovering or levitating while in prayer. And it got to such an extent where people would just come to see that they boarded up the window and locked the door so he could pray in peace, because he obviously did not want that secular glory either. I mean, he acted, it said that he acted as a fool. He'd go out barefoot in like the coldest days and things, and he would just go around San Fran barefoot. And acting foolish and things, not to because he was mentally ill or anything, but because he wanted to remove himself as far away as he could from that secular glory people would give him, like, oh, you're so holy and
Right,
pious
right.
and things.
And a lot of the holy people we see from that are canonized by the church, they lived these foolish lifestyles.
Yeah.
They were truly full for Christ, and they did to us things that would be really crazy, whether it be like sleep in a trunk of a tree, and that would be their prayer in their bed, and just a bunch of other things. But that's how these people choose to live their life and their calling to serve God, and it's truly beautiful to see. It may look odd, but once you kind of get behind, um, once you get past that fact, you see, oh, they're doing that because they have so much love in their heart. And like we were saying about when people would see him kind of hovering off the ground, many parishioners often would see him while doing the divine services. Alongside with that, would see a very bright, almost divine light emanating from him. And it just, through these holy people that God has been able to work through, he gives little miracles to those who witness them. And it's just so beautiful that these people can attest to it, and that it strengthens not only their faith but our faith. We get to hear those stories now, and just hear and truly come to understand the glory of what God can do through these people.
Well, I mean, there's also a very, I guess, timely story from his life, and it's about there is here. We'll read it here. We have it written down.
If it works.
Yeah, if the computer will.
Okay.
So here it is. Mrs. Menshikova was bitten by a mad dog. The injections against rabies they either refused to take or took carelessly, and then she came down with this terrible disease. Bishop John found out about it and came to the dying woman. He gave her Holy Communion, but just then she began having one of the fits of this disease. She began to foam at the mouth, and at the same time she spit out the holy gifts, which she had just received. The Holy Sacrament cannot be thrown out. So Vladka picked up the gifts and put it in his mouth, vomited by the sick woman. Those who were with him exclaimed, "Bishop, what are you doing? Rabies is terribly contagious." But Bishop peacefully answered, "Nothing will happen. These are the holy gifts." And indeed, nothing did happen.
Yeah, it's truly a beautiful testament to the faith that he had, and the faith that we should all have, especially during this time where we see kind of not necessarily a persecution, but society saying, oh, like, why would you partake of communion? Why would you share the same chalice? But what is contained in the chalice is the body and blood of Christ, and it truly is the body and blood of Christ. So as St. John had the reverence to take the small piece of the body from the vomit of the lady with rabies, we too should not have fear to approach the chalice during these times when we are able to go to church, because in the communion we'll receive grace from God and his protection, and will not get sick. And that's seen many times, whether it be pre-serving those with leprosy, back when that was like a very big deal, or tuberculosis, or all these crazy diseases. And even just today, like the priests go around to the hospitals and to sick people all the time and give them communion.
Even the homeless and things.
Yeah, the homeless. And they're not getting sick. They're true testaments to that right now. And we just thought that was such a timely story.
Yeah, well, a quote that comes to mind, it isn't from St. John Maximovitch, but it's from St. Joseph the Hesychist. And he said, "No one gets sick or dies without the will of the Lord." And so, we should be very cautious during these times, take the precautions and everything. But when it comes to communion especially, we should not fear it due to a sickness, because it's like a flame in that chalice. It burns everything, and so how can anything bad come from the body and blood of Christ if Christ is
giver
good?
Of everything.
God's good.
Right.
So how can anything bad come from it,
Of course. And hopefully we can all come to understand that, and truly, when we have the chance to come to church, come prepared and receive the holy body and blood of Christ. And I think that's just kind of how we wanted to end this episode, that through St. John's life, we see all of these beautiful teachings of asceticism, of prayer and protection. And there's so much more we didn't cover, like his ministry in Shanghai and
Western
Europe, and how he took his flock from Shanghai to an island in the Philippines.
He took refugees and lobbied at Washington D.C.
Yeah.
to get them in.
He came all the way from the Philippines to Washington D.C. and sat on the stairs of the Capitol, I believe it was, until someone noticed, and he petitioned for these people to be able to enter into this country. And that's how much love he had for his flock that he was serving, that God graced him with, and for all people. And just through his intercessions and prayers, I pray that we all may be able to know that God is enough and that he works through his saints.
Yes.
We'll see you all next week.